All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Everett. I'm the executive producer of FarmVille 2 Country Escape. And I've been shepherding along the game's development since we first got started.
And I'm Stan Patton. I'm a senior designer at Zynga. My main passion is the systems design aspect of design, but I kind of have my hands in everything design at Country Escape.
He's got his hands in everything, for sure. Right. Okay, so we wanted to start by giving everybody just a quick refresher on the FarmVille franchise. So FarmVille, the original game, celebrated its 5th anniversary in June. FarmVille 2, the sequel, is just about to celebrate its 2nd anniversary in September. These were pioneering social games, 400 million lifetime players to date. $1 billion in bookings, so it's a huge legacy for Stan and I to live up to, and we felt really honored to be involved in the development of bringing the FarmVille franchise to mobile. FarmVille and FarmVille 2 are both available to play right now on Facebook and on Zynga.com. So if anybody wants a refresher, wants to spend some time with the original FarmVille or with FarmVille 2, you can play them right now, or you can play Country Escape on your tablet and phone. All right, so a little bit about Country Escape. So, born in the land of legends, that the team that made Country Escape grew out of the team that made Castleville Legends, which was Zynga's first of a new generation of Invest Express games. So, got our sea legs under us building Castleville Legends, and then went on to start building FarmVille 2 Country Escape, which was a great experience because we all knew each other's working patterns, and it was easy to just start digging in and making a great game. The game was built from the ground up especially for tablets and phones. We took tons of inspiration from FarmVille and from FarmVille 2, and we'll talk about that quite a bit as we go through this material, but really spent a lot of time thinking about what is just the right experience for a FarmVille game on this platform. Cousins with FarmVille 2 on Facebook. There's a super tight relationship between the two games. There's the FarmVille 2 on Facebook has a huge, super enthusiastic audience, and people that are playing that game can play Country Escape and get mutual benefit out of playing both games. That you can, there's a truck that you can send back and forth between your Facebook farm and your mobile farm, sending butter and peaches and water and all kinds of valuable resources back and forth to kind of accentuate the gameplay on both ends. Let's see. The game loves to travel, so knowing play patterns are very different on mobile games than they are on a PC. Really had to think about the development of this game a little bit differently. What was critically important to factor into our decision-making process as we're developing this game, that we'll spend some time talking about that as we go through the material as well. And the game enjoys long walks on the beach, doesn't everybody? So we wanted Country Escape to have its own narrative, to be distinctive, to be its own experience, and so we set it in a new locale for the FarmVille franchise. So instead of being kind of the Midwest of America, this game is set in the Northeast on kind of a rocky coastal perch. So it's very unique, and people coming to Country Escape wouldn't mistake it for anything else.
So we took the job of translating the FarmVille franchise to mobile pretty seriously, and obviously our number one mission objective, our top priority, was to maintain the FarmVille experience, because if we didn't, we'd kind of ruin the franchise during the transition. We didn't want to do that. So that's priority one. But in order to do that, we have the cows and the chickens and the barns and hay bales and all that fun stuff, which we were enthusiastic to create and to share with our players, and that stuff, obviously, they find really valuable about the franchise. But from a systems design, high-level standpoint, it looks like Invest and Express. So the investment layer is you have players who are setting their own prospects. They're setting these timers with real-time payoffs that they get excited about even when they're not actively playing the game. They're thinking about the game. They're setting prospects voluntarily that they can be enthusiastic about. And that creates this fuel that fuels progression. It fuels unlocking new content that they can get excited about. It also fuels the acquisition of new objects that they can decorate their board with, and that's the Express part of Invest and Express. So that's what, of course, we had to maintain even in this transition to mobile.
Right. Next up, so with the previous FarmVille games, the main way that you interact with the games with a keyboard and mouse. Country Escape, something totally different. That this is a game that, like we said, was built from the ground up for mobile, and so the way that you interact with it is fundamentally different. It's all about tap and swipe and interactions that feel natural and friendly to the tablet and smartphone platforms. And we had to think about how interacting with the game in that way was going to influence the design of the game, the design of the core loop.
We also had to account for the fact that we couldn't we couldn't depend on any expectations about how the player should play the game, how often they should play it, or things that we're used to from web play. There's going to be players who play only for 5 minutes at a time or 1 minute at a time, but maybe are at high frequency. And you have players that are at low frequency, but they play in big chunks. And we had to design one game that accommodated all of that.
Right, and with that, they've got their phone in their pocket, they've got their tablet in their backpack, that they're playing in short doses and big doses, and they're playing in very unusual places. That you can have some expectations when somebody's on their PC about and playing a game on Facebook about what their setup is. You know that they're connected to the internet, that they've got a keyboard, that they've got a mouse, or they've got a touchpad. With a game like this, they could be anywhere, they could be in any situation, and they could be in airplane mode, they could be on the subway with a terrible internet connection, and once again, how does that influence the decisions that we needed to make in order to make this a great experience for players?
And kind of the final challenge was, even assuming we did all of this perfectly, had this perfect transition of the FarmVille franchise to mobile, that's kind of boring in and of itself because it doesn't contain a bunch of new stuff. And so the other challenge was farm fresh. We had to include a bunch of new novelties and delights and surprises that we could engage and excite players with.
Cool. All right. Sorry, the presentation has a mind of its own here. So moving on to solutions. So kind of laid out what the big challenges were. Now we want to talk through these challenges in a little bit more detail and what solutions we arrived at. So first up, a farm you can touch. So once again, taking a mobile-first approach. We took tons of inspiration from FarmVille, and in particular from FarmVille 2. Needed to think about how to kind of reinvent FarmVille, the franchise, for tablets and smartphones, and make it feel natural, bring that amazing Invest and Express farming experience to life in a natural way. And so we started with what are the most fundamental natural methods of interacting with your phone. So you pull it out of your pocket, and what's the first thing that you do? Well, that you swipe. And that's the very first thing you do when you grab your phone in order to bring up your passcode interface, and then you start tapping in order to open up your phone. Tap again in order to open up your applications, and those are the fundamental interactions. It's all about swiping and tapping, and that's what people learn to expect. So we started running with that in terms of how is it that people are going to want to interact with their farm, what's going to feel intuitive and natural to them right off the bat. We played with all kinds of crazy stuff. We played with scrubbing and with the accelerometer and all kinds of interesting and crazy ways of interacting with your farm, and although they were fun, we quickly discovered that too many different methods of trying to interact with your farm just created a ton of confusion. What am I supposed to be doing now? How do I interact with this thing? That fewer, more distilled methods of interacting that were things that they were already familiar with and that were repeatable in multiple places throughout the game is what felt right. So using an example here, we've got a chicken that's on the game board. How are you going to interact with that chicken? Well, the natural thing is that you're going to tap the chicken. We got lots of little chickens that are all running around, and on a tiny little screen, they're extremely small. So we have to factor in kind of scale the human hand, and ended up coming up with a system where it's not really the chicken that you're tapping on, but it's the whole chicken kind of pen, the larger area around the chicken that you tap on in order to activate them. What the player perceives is that they're tapping on the chicken, even if that their touch point is a little bit off, but we need to compensate for that and give them kind of generous, friendly, feel-good pads to interact with so that they think they've tapped on the chicken responds. Once it comes up, they get a little water icon, swipe the water in, and the chicken starts to make eggs for them. So tap and swipe, tap and swipe. It's just a pattern that we repeat all throughout the game. It feels super intuitive and natural to players.
We kind of talked about how there are a bunch of different players with different behaviors and play styles, and session profiles is kind of what we call it. In order to accommodate that with a single game, we have a bunch of different timers in the game. And we've done different timers in the past. Obviously, you can have short-term and long-term. In our game, we kind of went a little bit crazier, and we had really short timers. So you can water an apple tree, and 8 seconds later, it'll be ready to yield. So you can set these really short-term prospects, do something else in the game, and come right back and do something with them. So that's really cool, as well as the long-term timers like the peaches and lemons and stuff. We also kind of had a shrewd strategy for how we balanced the object prices, the craft prices. So at the end of the day, you're selling these crafts to this order board, and you're getting coins out of them. And our strategy for pricing these objects is we said each object is going to pretend as if you cared only about it when you were growing this stuff, growing the constituent ingredients. The cool thing about this is as soon as the players figure out how to multitask and strategize for themselves, they can kind of take advantage of the game and feel really smart. And so we deliberately picked a pricing strategy to make the players feel like they're outsmarting us, which makes them have a lot of fun in the game and feel that the strategy is deep, regardless of their session behavior. There's enough content for them across that systems design spectrum. The last thing that we decided to do was there's kind of this traditional thing where crops wither if you don't come back to the game in an appropriate time fashion. And we said that's kind of lame if we want to accommodate every single player across the spectrum. We want them to come back to the game and not have a big bummer moment. We want them to come back and say, oh, this is great. Everything is ready for me to harvest, even though it's been 3 days since I last played.
Right. And just one quick additional note on this, that there's a narrative element that went with deciding what was going to go on a short timer versus a long timer. You'll see here that we've got some really basic sort of farming kind of fundamental things like milk and eggs and apples. Feel super basic and really kind of foundation farming elements. So they're all on short timers. So you're dealing with them a lot and kind of reinforcing that farming narrative. And things that maybe are a little bit more elaborate, a little bit more fun, like peaches and pears and lemons are on slightly longer timers. It just kind of makes sense that they would take a little bit longer to grow, and they're a lot more valuable in the game as well. So it's just something interesting to think about as we're all going forth and developing new games is what are the things that sort of support the foundation of our narrative, and what kind of timers do we want those to be on in order to continue to reinforce those narrative themes and ideas. Right, okay, so play anywhere. We talked about these, that a gaming experience on a tablet or a phone is very different from a PC. People are playing these things anywhere. They're on the subway. They're on an airplane, and we simply can't guarantee that players have an internet connection. We're doing a ton of market research, but while we were super early in development of the game, and asking players, what is it that you want in your FarmVille experience for tablets and phones? And one of the first things that came out and ended up being one of the biggest things that continued to be reinforced was they wanted offline play. They wanted to be able to connect to the servers and play in a connected manner when it suited them, and they wanted to be able to completely ignore the network and be able to play single player at their discretion. Makes a ton of sense. You're on an airplane on an 11-hour flight and want to be able to play FarmVille, and don't want to have that experience kind of yanked away from you because you don't have an internet connection. Not your fault. You want to be you're on the subway and jetting in and out of tunnels and want to just be able to play FarmVille. Don't want the internet to get in your way. So offline mode was a big demand from the players, and I'm super happy that we decided to implement it. But thinking about the commitment for everybody that's thinking about making their next game, offline mode highly desirable. Players love it, but it is a lot of work to spin up and kind of get right because it has so many ramifications on the design. If you are making a game that fully supports offline mode, supports it really well, you cannot assume that people are always socially connected, and that has a big impact on how you design your features and how you design your core loop.
So our challenge was kind of, the play anywhere. Well, our solution is have a bunch of social freedom. So you can decide which social networks you want to be attached to, if any. You can play online or offline. And so that's awesome, except that creates a bunch of its own challenges, as Jason kind of alluded to. How do you make one game that fully satisfies a single-player experience while also fully satisfying the social folks and the folks who really want to engage in meaningful social features? Also, there's the fact that we would like single players to feel social and to get social. We want to compel them to do that. That would be awesome. Like, come on, get out of your shell. So our strategy was kind of soft but compelling. So
power up.
But yes, exactly. So power up. So in a lot of these traditional games, you have these hard barriers that say you need X friends to come out and help you, and we couldn't have that. Like, we had to jettison that little design piece. So instead, we had to choose things that felt almost as compelling but weren't totally required. And two of the big ways we did that were through speed seed and farm stand trading. Right, speed seed. Which we'll talk about right now. So speed seed, one of the best ways to create a compelling thing that has an obvious value proposition is to violate players' expectations in an awesome way. So one of the ways we did here is in kind of traditional invest and express games, if you want to speed through an interaction you don't want to wait for, it kind of feels like cheating, and so players see, okay, yeah, of course they're charging me for this, right? Like, I have to spend hard currency in order to speed through this thing. Well, what if we kind of violate that design expectation and we say, actually, for crops, trees, and animals, you don't have to spend your hard currency. You can use this thing called Speed Seed. It's a one-size-fits-all coupon, which means if you use it for long interactions, you're kind of outsmarting us, make the player feel good about that. But it makes them excited to send and receive a viral instead of feeling like, oh, it's this hygienic thing that the game makes me do in order to get past a barrier.
Cool.
The other thing we introduced was farm stand trading. For the first time in FarmVille, you can actually put any item in the game up for sale, name your own price, and then you can go shopping for other items. And some competitors have the same kind of thing. This is novel to the Farm franchise, even if it's not novel to the genre. The trick is here we wanted to make it a socially compelling feature. In order to do that, we paid special attention to our fetch and filter algorithms so that the items populating your little shopping center over here are things that you would really be interested in purchasing. So when you open this thing up, you aren't introduced with just a flood of eggs or something, and you're like, well, why did I connect to Facebook? This is kind of lame. Instead, you find all of these objects which are actually relevant to you and which you can actually grab and bling up or craft into new things. So it turns into a really compelling feature for players.
Right. Yeah. Social method of kind of accelerating your single player play, and you can use it on both ends. That you can put stuff up for sale to if you want to make a ton of coins really quickly. That you can be a purchaser if you're looking for those last ingredients you need to craft goods to finish quests or do whatever the game is asking you to do in order to level up. Cool. All right, Farm Fresh. So we want to talk a little bit about a few of the things that we added that are additive to the FarmVille franchise. Not just kind of reinventing the core loop in order to bring FarmVille to mobile, but how do we enrich it and deepen it and add new types of gameplay? So one of the first things that we did is added these things called farm adventures. So I'm at my farm. That I noticed that around my farm I've got these extra little locations. I've got a pond that's over behind the barn. I've got a mine that's off in one corner, and over near the farmhouse, and I've got this glade. Well, I've got these little characters that are hanging out at my farmhouse, and they're playing horseshoes and taking naps and doing that kind of stuff. I tap on the pond. I can put these farmhands to work in these locations, and they will go and find super rare goods for me.
And so from a systems design standpoint, we talk about kind of like the supply and demand and the balance in the game, those kind of dry, bland terms for talking about these things. Because at the end of the day, for players, what this means is stuff I really care about and stuff that I really want and stuff that I'm excited to acquire. So in this case, the more farmhands you send on farm adventures, the higher the likelihood it is of getting rare items. What that means is we have just created demand space for farmhands. We've cultivated demand space, and that gives us great payoffs later on all sorts of different features in our game, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah, and it also really helps us to to deepen the narrative for the game too. That all of a sudden your farms come to life with little farmhands after you kind of put them to work, fishing in your pond and foraging for things in your glade. And we're seeing tons of Instagram posts from players yelling about their farmhand or napping on the job on top of the mine, and they need to go find me copper. And they just create these really wonderful story moments, which really help the players bond to the game at an even more deep level, which has been really fun to see. All right, next up is co-ops. So co-ops are a reinterpretation of guild gameplay, and the two kind of key features for guilds / co-ops in Country Escape are that there is a special trading channel which is available to you and everybody else who's in your guild, and we've got chat that supports it. So if Stan desperately needs blackberries in order to quick craft some blackberry tarts, he can hit me up in the chat channel and say, hey, do you have some blackberries? Can you put them up in trading? Could really use them. Swear I'll pay you back on Tuesday. Right, so I can make some blackberries available to Stan to finish his crafts, and he'll pay back the favor later. In addition to that, we also have the ability to give each other what we call helping hands, which are these little farmhand characters that if Stan grants me one, it'll drive up to my farm in a truck. I can then put that helping hand to work in any one of my farm adventures. There's 3 different classes of these helping hands that each specialize in one of the different farm adventure scenes and are expert at getting different kinds of things. So a fisherman that's great at getting trout and bass, and a gardener who's great at getting chives and blackberries at Grandma's Glade.
And this is another aspect where, because we cultivated all that demand for farmhands, it creates the demand to make folks want to engage in this. Even players who are kind of antisocial, they're not really into chat, but if they're kind of min-maxing the game, they will want to engage in a co-op.
Cool. And last up, events.
So, in our lives, as we progress, we can get promotions or we can level up in age. But we also like to go to parties and experience holidays and do all this kind of peripheral stuff to our main progression. And it's kind of best practice in these games to have the same kind of thing in the game. So not only are you leveling up and doing the things that you're kind of used to, you also have big surprises in the form of events. So events are time limited, they're tough, but they're doable. You do better at them if you are engaging socially because you can help each other out, and suddenly it's this big communal effort, which is totally awesome.
Through your co-op.
Right, through your co-op. The thing is, you have to have the carrot on the end of the stick that makes sense for players. Not that's going to trick them, but that they really consider valuable. One of the ways to do that is to cultivate that demand. So what if you take a farmhand, which players are clamoring for and salivating for, and you combine with something that they'd want anyway, like an awesome-looking dog on their farm? Suddenly you have a dog farmhand that's going out on adventures. You combine the flavor aspect plus the cultivated demand that we generated, and we expect that players are just going to get super excited about it.
Right. So we were the ultimate reward for the event that you see here, which is called the Summer Celebration, was a German Shepherd, and players are super excited about the opportunity to win a German Shepherd farmhand for their game. We have another event that's actually starting day after tomorrow called the Eagle Eye Eddie's Air Show, and we're super excited about this. We've got airplanes that are flying all over the place with leaving colored contrails and all kinds of fun things to craft to earn awesome rewards for this event as well. And it's again starting soon.
Right, and the coolest thing about this is when you put a bunch of time and energy and effort into doing awesome stuff like animated air shows with 3D planes flying around. This is on top of this main loop that players are liking and they're used to, but it contributes towards something that is narratively really exciting and meaningful.
Cool. All right, so how are we doing? We just wanted to cover a few of the data points from our initial launch of Country Escape back in April. Great response from players at launch. They'd been telling us for a long time that they wanted to see FarmVille on tablets and phones. We brought it to them, and they were thrilled with that. 4 million downloads of the game in its first 6 days live. It got Editor's Choice on Apple's App Store. It reached #1 top free app in the US and #1 top free game on the iPad, and also hit the top 20 grossing. So we're very happy with those results at initial launch. All right. Thanks, everybody. Cool. Any questions? Yeah.
When it comes to the offline implementation, do you sacrifice any of the functionality in the online version, aside from just being able to connect socially?
So there are several features that require you to be connected online to take advantage of. Co-op play, purely online feature. So if you want to be able to exchange helping hands and use the co-op trading channel, then yeah, you've got to be connected. It's just sort of the natural thing that there's a lot of gameplay that just won't work unless you have a connection.
Like there are a lot of games where you boot up and they just say you're not online, you can't play, and so basically you have to say, okay, there are certain features that you can't engage with if you're offline. Otherwise, the rest of it you don't need to be online for. So we're going to let you be offline for that stuff.
And we try to be the game itself is super forgiving about it. So you can make the decision that you just simply want to have an offline play experience and never connect to any one of the social networks and just kind of play solo. And if you do that, yeah, there's a good number of features that you won't be able to take advantage of, but you can still play the game, progress all the way through it. If you connect to Facebook or Game Center, Google Play, we support all three of them, and are taking advantage of those features. If you don't have an internet connection, it's fine. It'll just the game shows you a little offline icon, and you try to activate those parts of the game. It'll just politely tell you, sorry, you're offline right now. Reconnect to the internet, and you can do this part of the game. Yeah.
So you guys did a handful of things that made the game a little bit more fun, made it more rewarding for a player. Things like the speed seeds, things like allowing players to feel like they're gaming the system offline mode. How did that impact you from a financial perspective? Did that have any impact on monetization, both either positive or negative?
We really looked at it more from the perspective of, what's right for the gameplay experience, what's right from the players. I mean, if you make a great game, good things are going to happen for the business of the game. That's really the approach that we took.
Sorry, how many releases did you have? Did you have a soft and then a hard release, or soft launch, hard launch? And then at what point did you go back and say, we do need to make changes to the way we do monetization or something else, and then re-release a different version of the app?
Sure. We released the game early in Canada and Australia, and we're looking at all kinds of things. We're looking at everything that players had to tell us about what was what was fun, what was engaging, what was fun, what was frustrating. That we were looking at crash rates and bugs, and doing everything that we could in order to use that time to make the game more performant and just a better experience, as just well as more fun and engaging. We continue to watch all of those things, even today, and that we're working on a new release all the time. So not just events, but new features and content all the time. Always searching out bugs, crashes, all those kinds of things in order to make the game just the best possible experience it can be.
And from a design standpoint, we're also tracking the market, to see what is the actual supply and demand. Where are there stockpiles that we didn't expect? Where are there deficits that we need to account for? And that lets us make perpetual tuning improvements and changes as the game continues on. The game, I don't think will ever be done being designed, because we always got to change it in order to keep it delightful and exciting with events and stuff, but also kind of fix it if we didn't make perfect projections, because we're not wizards. So.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
So you guys have a feature where you can link the game to the Facebook version, right?
Right.
How many players do you find that are playing both the mobile version and the Facebook version?
We have a lot of players that are playing both, for sure. I don't have an exact number for you, but it's been a super successful feature. Lots of people sending their truck back and forth. And people that are super deeply engaged really find it hugely advantageous. In the web game, water is a super scarce resource, and it really kind of controls how long you can play and how much you can do. In Country Escape, water's free. You have as much of it as you want. So loading up your truck with water and sending it over via your truck to your web farm is a great gameplay accelerator for the game on Facebook. In return, butter's pretty hard to make in Country Escape. It's actually pretty easy to make in the web game. So one optimal play strategy that I found, at least, is to load up my truck with water, send it over to my web game, load my truck up with butter, and send it back.
Just a question about the future of the franchise. How do you see the future? You introduced new features, actually, adventures, things like that. It's becoming more and more complex, I would say. How do you see it? Maybe it's becoming something about storytelling more and more? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Stan and I are we're laser focused on Country Escape, as a FarmVille's game experience. We're thinking, every day about how to grow and evolve that experience. And Stan was talking about events that we just had our first one that wrapped up, the summer celebration. Following it up with the air show, and are thinking about how to move forward gameplay and the narrative of the game through events as we move forward. I mean, I kind of feel like with Country Escape that we're just at the beginning, and there's just so much territory to cover. And then, on the feature design end of things, that we're looking at, where the progression for the game currently ends, and how we're going to carry that forward in, in interesting, compelling new ways.
Right, and the sky's kind of the limit, but we are trying to explore those boundaries. What doesn't get too complex, while at the same time deepens the experience and makes the player feel like this world is real, like there's a depth to it. So the narrative that we have just on the quest in the game is some of the best narrative that I've seen in a social game. It's really funny. We put a lot of time and effort into it, and so yeah, we're exploring and pushing all those boundaries as much as makes sense for our players.
All right. Thanks, Stan and Jason.
Awesome. Thank you
All
guys.
right.